They whispered his name in the marble corridors of power. Li Jiangwu, the man who made Seoul's elite tremble and government officials disappear. The Shadow King didn't negotiate, he didn't forgive. But on a bitter December night at the most prestigious charity gala of the year, Korea's upper class discovered his singular weakness: his mother. As champagne-drunk chaebol heirs watched a vindictive socialite raise her hand to strike a confused elderly woman, Jangwoo did something the terrified crowd didn't expect. He waited. He watched from the shadows until a black American nurse in borrowed scrubs 2 sizes too large and 60,001 in her bank account stepped between the predator and the prey. This is the story of how a night shift nurse didn't just save a life, she conquered an empire. If you're new here, please subscribe and turn on notifications. These stories only live because you share them. Now, let's continue. The Shilla Seoul's grand ballroom smelled of wealth so old it had calcified into arrogance. It was the annual Winter Charity Gala, a 8 million per plate masquerade where Seoul's elite pretended their money washed away their sins. Swarovski crystal chandeliers, each worth more than an apartment in Gangnam, bathed 600 guests in fractured golden light as they sipped Dom Perignon and traded insider secrets like baseball cards. High above the glittering chaos on the shadowed mezzanine overlooking the ballroom, Li Jiangwu stood motionless as a monument carved from ice and fury. He didn't drink. He didn't mingle. He simply adjusted the platinum cufflinks on his Tom Ford suit, his dark eyes scanning the crowd below with the cold precision of a sniper calculating distance. At 34, Jiang Wu was the apex predator of Seoul's criminal underworld. To the business world, he was the CEO of Hanjin Group, a conglomerate spanning shipping, construction, and entertainment. To the prosecutors, he was untouchable. To those who truly knew, he was the Shadow King, the architect who built criminal empires and dismantled opposition with surgical efficiency. Politicians owed him favors. Judges ruled in his favor. CEOs answered his calls at 3 a.m. "Boss," came the low voice of Park Hyun-soo, his head of security, through the nearly invisible earpiece. "Your mother just left the VIP lounge again. Nurse Kim is searching the West Wing." Jang-woo's jaw clenched, the only visible crack in his marble composure. "Find her, Hyun-soo. Carefully. If anyone so much as looks at her wrong, I want their name." "Understood." Jang-woo's eyes swept the ballroom, hunting for the small, delicate figure of Lee Kyung-mi. His mother was 72, her mind slowly being stolen by dementia's cruel progression. Most days she believed she was still a young woman in Busan, waiting for her husband to return from the shipyard. Tonight, Jang-woo had brought her against every instinct he possessed because she'd clutched his hand and whispered, "Please, Jang-woo-ya, I want to see beautiful things one more time." He couldn't refuse her. He'd moved heaven, earth, and bodies for her. But he couldn't stop time. Down on the ballroom floor, the atmosphere was suffocating for Chloe Clark. Chloe shifted on her feet, her borrowed formal dress uncomfortable against her skin. She was 26 years old, utterly invisible, and running on 4 hours of sleep. The dress, a simple black number she'd borrowed from a colleague, hung awkwardly on her athletic frame, pinned at the waist with safety pins she'd grabbed from the hospital supply closet. She wasn't supposed to be here. She was supposed to be finishing her shift at Seoul National University Hospital, where she worked as a registered nurse in the geriatric ward. But when the hospital administrator had desperately needed medical personnel on standby for the gala, liability requirements for an event with so many elderly VIPs, Chloe had volunteered. The overtime pay would help with her sister Sandra's tuition. She'd been on her feet for 14 hours across her regular shift and now this event. Her student loan payment was 3 weeks overdue, and her 19-year-old sister Sandra needed her final semester of nursing school funded. Money Chloe didn't have until this gala paid out. "Excuse me, miss. More champagne?" A server offered her a glass. "I'm staff, not a guest," Chloe said with a tired smile, gesturing to the small medical badge clipped to her dress. "Medical standby." The server nodded and moved on. Chloe was furniture to these people, a serving mechanism, not a person with rent and responsibilities, and a kid sister whose future literally depended on her. Near the center of the ballroom, the energy shifted. The low murmur of polite conversation sharpened into something else, curiosity mixed with cruelty. Chloe turned her head and saw the crowd parting like a curtain being drawn back. An elderly Korean woman in a beautiful but slightly outdated royal blue hanbok stood near the ice sculpture, looking utterly lost. She wore jade earrings and glasses that magnified her confused, frightened eyes. Her hands trembled as she clutched a small beaded evening bag. It was Lee Kyung-mi. She looked terrified, her gaze darting around the room as if she'd woken in a nightmare. The crowd didn't move to help. They stepped back, creating a circle of space around her. Not out of respect, but disgust. To them, confusion was contagious. Standing directly in Kyung-mi's path was Oh Hye-rin. Hye-rin was sole royalty by marriage, the wife of a construction magnate, a woman whose face was stretched tight by the best plastic surgeons in Gangnam and whose soul was even tighter. She wore a floor-length emerald Dior gown that cost more than Chloe's annual salary, and diamonds dripped from her neck like crystallized spite. Kyung-mi, disoriented by the music and the lights, reached out instinctively. "Yobo," she whispered, mistaking a passing waiter for her late husband. Her hand grasped for stability. She stumbled. Her trembling fingers caught Hye-rin's forearm. Hye-rin's champagne flute tilted. The golden liquid arced through the air in slow motion and splashed across the front of her gown. The reaction was instantaneous. The string quartet didn't stop playing, but the silence around them became a living thing, hungry and vicious. Hye-rin stared down at her dress, her mouth falling open in theatrical horror. When she looked up at Kyung-mi, her eyes blazed with a rage so pure it could melt steel. "You disgusting, senile old woman!" Hye-rin's voice cracked like a whip across the ballroom. Several guests gasped. Others smirked, leaning in for the show. Kyung-mi flinched violently, her body shrinking into itself. I'm sorry," she stammered, her accent thickening with fear. "The room. It spins. I didn't mean... Do you have any idea what this dress costs?" Hye-rin stepped forward, towering over the smaller woman. "This is vintage Dior. It's worth more than whatever hovel you crawled out of." From the mezzanine, Jungwoo's hand moved to the railing. The ornate brass groaned under the pressure of his grip. He took one step toward the marble staircase, his vision tunneling, his pulse a war drum in his ears. But he stopped. He forced himself to stop. His security team was moving. He could see them converging, but they were hesitating. Oh, Hye-rin was connected. Her husband controlled billions in construction contracts. No one wanted to create an incident. Jang-woo wanted to see something else. In this room of 400 supposed allies, supposed friends, supposed civilized people, he wanted to see who would help his mother. "Show me," he thought, his rage turning cold and surgical. "Show me who in this room deserves to wake up tomorrow." Hye-rin wasn't finished. She grabbed Kyung-mi's thin wrist, her manicured nails digging into the papery skin hard enough to leave marks. "You're going to fix this," Hye-rin hissed, her voice dripping venom. "Right now." "Please," Kyung-mi whimpered, tears spilling down her weathered cheeks. "I want to go home. I want my son." "You're not going anywhere." Hye-rin pointed one sharp nail at the marble floor where droplets of champagne had spattered. "Get on your knees. Use that ratty hanbok you're wearing. Wipe it up." The crowd watched. Men in tuxedos worth 5 figures, women wearing jewelry that could fund hospitals. They all just watched. Some looked uncomfortable. Most looked entertained. "I said..." Hye-rin raised her free hand, palm open, aimed at Kyung-mi's face. "Get on your knees." She shoved Kyung-mi backward. Kyung-mi's legs buckled. She began sinking toward the cold, unforgiving floor, a soft sob escaping her lips. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Jang-woo felt something snap inside his chest. Not his heart, but the last restraint holding back the monster. His hand moved inside his jacket toward the gun he always carried. He was going to kill Ohirin in the middle of the Shilla Soul Ballroom. He was going to paint the marble with her blood and let the consequences fall where they may. But before he could move, a blur of black shot across the polished floor. Chloe didn't think, didn't calculate, didn't weigh the cost. She just saw her own grandmother in the terrified eyes of the woman about to be struck. Her medical bag hit a nearby table with a thud. Chloe ran the last 15 feet and dropped to her knees, sliding between Hee-rin and Kyung-mi just as the older woman was about to hit the ground. Chloe caught Kyung-mi in her arms, wrapping her strong, work-hardened hands around the fragile shoulders, pulling her close and upright. "Don't you dare touch her," Chloe said. Her voice was shaking, but it was loud enough to shatter the silence. Hee-rin froze, her hand still raised mid-strike, her face twisting into an expression of pure shock. "Excuse me? Do you know who I am?" Chloe looked up at her, still holding Kyung-mi protectively. Her heart was hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs, but she didn't look away. "Do you know who she is?" Chloe's voice was steadier now, fueled by something bigger than fear. "She's somebody's mother." The ballroom held its breath. On the mezzanine above, Lee Jiang-woo went completely still. And for the first time in a decade, the Shadow King smiled. These stories don't tell themselves. If you're feeling this journey, hit that subscribe button. Your support keeps these voices alive. Let's keep going. The ballroom didn't just go silent. It went airless. 400 people stopped breathing at once, their champagne flutes frozen halfway to their lips. Their conversations dying mid-syllable. The string quartet faltered, a violinist missing a note that hung in the air like a warning. Chloe knelt on the cold marble floor, her arms still wrapped protectively around Kyung-mi, whose thin frame trembled against her chest. The elderly woman's fingers clutched at Chloe's borrowed dress, seeking safety, seeking human kindness in a room that had forgotten what kindness looked like. Oh, Hee-rin stared down at them, her face cycling through shock, disbelief, and then hardening into something genuinely dangerous. She lowered her raised hand slowly, her manicured fingers curling into a fist. "You little—" Hee-rin's voice came out as a hiss. "Do you have any idea what you just did? I could have you arrested. I could have you blacklisted from every hospital in Korea. You'll never work in this country again." Chloe's mind was screaming at her to apologize, to grovel, to save whatever pieces of her life she could salvage from this moment. She thought of Sandra back in their tiny apartment, probably studying at their kitchen table with the wobbly leg, completely unaware that her big sister had just committed career suicide. She thought of the double shifts she worked, the night shifts and weekend rotations, all so she could afford Sandra's nursing school tuition and their shared apartment in a neighborhood most expats avoided. But then Kyung-mi whispered something in Korean, her voice breaking. And Chloe felt the old woman's heart racing against her own chest like a trapped bird. "She's terrified," Chloe said quietly, looking up at Hee-rin. "Can't you see that? She's just confused and scared. And you were going to hit her?" "She ruined my dress!" Hee-rin's voice pitched higher, attracting even more attention. A semicircle of onlookers had formed around them now, phones discreetly angled to capture the spectacle. "This is a 80 million won gown, and this demented old bat—" "Don't call her that." Chloe's voice came out harder than she intended. She carefully helped Kyung-mi to her feet, keeping herself positioned between the elderly woman and Hee-rin. "She's a person. She deserves respect." Hee-rin laughed. Actually laughed. A sound like breaking glass. "Respect? From who? You? You're a nurse. You're nobody. You're a foreigner who exists to serve people like me, not lecture me about respect. Do you even have proper papers?" Chloe had heard variations of this her entire life in Korea. The invisible girl. The helping hands without a face. The Black American woman who cleaned up other people's messes and was expected to disappear afterward without complaint, without dignity, without even the acknowledgement that she was human. She'd swallowed it 1,000 times before, smiled through the condescension, nodded through the casual racism, because she had to, because Sandra needed her, because survival meant becoming small enough to slip through the cracks of other people's cruelty. But this woman had tried to hit someone's mother, had tried to make a confused, frightened elderly woman grovel on the floor of a ballroom while hundreds of people watched and did nothing. "You're right," Chloe said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I'm nobody. I make 3,500,001 a month. I live in a fifth-floor walk-up in Itaewon with no elevator. I work double shifts to put my sister through school." She lifted her chin, meeting Hirin's furious gaze. "But I know that hitting someone's mother because she accidentally spilled your drink makes you less than nobody. It makes you a bully. And I don't care how much your dress costs. I won't let you hurt her." The crowd's reaction was immediate. Some people gasped. Others pulled out their phones more openly now, sensing this was about to go viral. A few actually applauded, soft and uncertain, before quickly stopping when Hirin shot them venomous looks. Hirin's face went crimson. "You sanctimonious little—" She stepped forward, and for a moment, Chloe genuinely thought the woman was going to try to hit her instead. But then a voice cut through the tension like a blade through silk. "Step away from them, Mrs. Oh." The voice came from above, deep, cold, and carrying an authority that made Hirin freeze mid-step. Every head in the ballroom turned toward the mezzanine. Chloe looked up and saw him for the first time. The man descended the curved marble staircase with the deliberate pace of someone who knew the entire room would wait for him. He wore a midnight black suit that probably cost more than Chloe's yearly rent, perfectly tailored to his tall, athletic frame. His hair was dark and precisely cut, his features sharp and aristocratic, high cheekbones, a strong jaw, and eyes that caught the chandelier light like chips of obsidian. But it wasn't his appearance that made the crowd part for him like the Red Sea. It was the presence. The way people instinctively moved out of his path. The way conversations died as he passed. The way even Hirin, who moments ago had been on the verge of assault, went pale beneath her foundation. Two massive men in dark suits flanked him. Security, clearly, with earpieces, and the kind of alertness that suggested military training. But the man in the center needed no protection. He was danger-walking in Tom Ford and platinum cufflinks. "Chairman Lee," Hirin stammered, her voice losing all its venom and replacing it with something close to panic. This isn't what it looks like. This woman attacked me, and your mother—" "My mother," Lee Jiangwu said, his voice soft but somehow audible to every corner of the silent ballroom, "appears to be unharmed. No thanks to you." He reached the bottom of the stairs and walked directly to Chloe and Kyungmi. His security team shadowed him, but he raised one hand slightly, signaling them to keep their distance. Up close, Chloe realized just how tall he was, at least 6 feet 2 inches, towering over her even though she was standing now. His eyes, those impossible dark eyes, swept over Kyungmi first, checking her for injuries, with a gaze that softened imperceptibly before hardening again when they shifted to Hirin. "Mrs. O," he said, "you attempted to strike my mother." "No, I would never—" "She ruined my dress, Chairman Lee, and I was simply asking her to—" "You told her to get on her knees." His voice didn't rise, didn't need to. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "You put your hands on her. You raised your hand to hit a 72-year-old woman with dementia because she accidentally spilled champagne on fabric." Hirin's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. It's Dior. I don't care if it's woven from the hair of angels and blessed by the Buddha himself." Jiangwu's expression remained perfectly neutral, which somehow made him more terrifying. "You touched my mother. You made her cry. You humiliated her in front of 400 people." He pulled out his phone, a sleek, minimalist device, and made a single call without breaking eye contact with Hirin. When someone answered, he spoke 3 sentences. "Buy O construction. All of it." Make the announcement tonight. He hung up. Hiren's face went from red to white in the span of a heartbeat. You can't. That's my husband's company. We've been in business for 40 years. You've been in business for 40 years because I allowed it, Jiang Wu said simply. Your husband holds contracts for 3 of my subsidiary developments. Or he did. By morning, those contracts will be cancelled, and I'll make sure every partner he has knows exactly why. He paused. I'd say you'll never work in this city again, but someone beat me to that line tonight. His gaze flicked briefly to Chloe, something unreadable passing through his expression. Hiren was trembling now, her earlier confidence completely shattered. Please, Chairman Lee, I didn't know she was your mother. If I had known... If you had known, you would have treated her with basic human decency? His voice was sharp as a scalpel. That's not the defense you think it is, Mrs. O. It tells me you're not cruel because you're ignorant. You're cruel because you believe you can be. Leave now, and pray I don't decide you're worth more of my attention. Hiren practically ran. Her heels clicked frantically against the marble as she fled toward the exit, her ruined Dior gown trailing behind her like the tatters of her social standing. The crowd watched her go in absolute silence. Then Jiang Wu turned to his mother. The transformation was immediate and startling. The cold, ruthless predator who'd just destroyed a woman's life in 3 sentences softened into something almost unrecognizable. He took Kyung-mi's hands gently, his voice dropping to a tender murmur. Iyama, he said softly. Are you hurt? Kyung-mi looked up at her son, her cloudy eyes focusing with effort. Jungwoo-ya, when did you get so tall? She touched his face with trembling fingers. You look so much like your father. I know, Iyama. He kissed her forehead. Let's get you somewhere quiet. Yes, somewhere with tea and soft chairs. That would be nice. Then Kyung-mi turned to Chloe, her expression brightening with surprising clarity. The kind girl. She caught me. She was very brave. Yes, Jiang Wu said, his eyes shifting to Chloe for the first time with something other than peripheral awareness. She was. Chloe stood frozen, acutely aware that she was now the focus of the Shadow King's full attention. His gaze traveled over her, not leering but assessing, taking in her borrowed dress, her sensible shoes, her face still flushed from adrenaline and fear. One of his security men approached, a massive figure with a military bearing and sharp eyes. Boss, Nurse Kim is bringing the car around. We should move your mother before the media arrives. Agreed. Jiang Wu gently guided Kyung-mi toward his security team, who surrounded her like a protective wall. But before he turned away completely, he looked back at Chloe. You... His voice wasn't cold anymore, but it wasn't warm either. It was curious. What's your name? Chloe's throat was dry. Chloe Clark. Chloe Clark. He repeated, as if committing it to memory. You work at the hospital? The medical standby team? Yes, sir. Seoul National University Hospital. I'm a registered nurse. Geriatric ward. She was babbling now. The reality of what she'd done crashing over her like a wave. She'd probably lost her job. She'd definitely made a scene. And she'd somehow gotten tangled up with a man who could apparently buy and destroy companies with a phone call. You don't work for them anymore, Jiang Wu said. Chloe's heart stopped. What? You work for me now. He pulled a business card from his jacket pocket, heavy cardstock, embossed with simple text, and held it out to her. Come to this address tomorrow at noon. We'll discuss terms. Terms? Chloe took the card with numb fingers. I don't understand. What terms? My mother needs someone who actually gives a damn about her well-being, he said bluntly. Someone who sees her as a person, not an inconvenience. You proved tonight that you're that person. I need a full-time private nurse for her. Someone she can trust. Someone I can trust. Chloe's mind reeled. But I can't just quit my job. I have responsibilities. My sister... Name your price, Jiang Wu interrupted, his expression serious. businesslike. Whatever you need. Medical coverage, salary, housing if necessary. Name it. Chloe's hands were shaking. This was insane. This man was clearly dangerous. The whole room had reacted to him like prey recognizing an apex predator. But he was offering her a way out, a way to help Sandra, a chance at the kind of security she'd never imagined possible. My sister is in her final year of nursing school, Chloe heard herself say. She needs her tuition covered, about 15 million won. And our lease is up next month. We can barely afford our apartment. Jangwoo didn't even blink. Done. What else? Chloe felt dizzy. That's it. That's everything. No. He stepped closer, and Chloe caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with something darker, leather, and smoke. There's always something else. What do you want, Chloe Clark? Not for your sister. For yourself. No one had ever asked her that before. Chloe stared at him, this terrifying, powerful man who'd just casually agreed to pay for her sister's education like it was pocket change. I want to get my nurse practitioner certification, she whispered. I want to specialize in geriatric care. I had to put it on hold when I moved here because I couldn't afford the programs and support Sandra at the same time. Jangwoo nodded once. Then that's part of the deal. Your sister's tuition, your certification program, and a salary that makes your current job look like volunteer work. In exchange, you take care of my mother. You treat her with dignity. You keep her safe. His voice dropped lower. And you tell no one about what you see or hear in my home. Ever. It should have terrified her. That last part was clearly a warning that whatever world she was stepping into operated by different rules. But Chloe looked past Jangwoo's shoulder at Kyungmi, who was now sitting on a velvet bench with a security guard offering her a bottle of water, looking small and vulnerable and lost. Someone's mother. Someone who deserved kindness. Okay, Chloe said. I'll do it. Jangwoo's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Approval, maybe? Or relief? He held out his hand. Chloe shook it. His grip was firm, warm, and carried the weight of an unbreakable contract. Tomorrow. Noon. Don't be late. He released her hand and turned to leave, his security team already moving to escort Kyungmi out. But he paused after a few steps and looked back over his shoulder. Thank you, Jangwoo said quietly, for protecting her when no one else would. Then he was gone, striding toward the exit with his mother safely tucked against his side, leaving Chloe standing in the center of a ballroom full of staring, whispering elites. She looked down at the business card in her hand. Heavy cardstock, embossed lettering, an address in Hanam-dong that she recognized as one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in Seoul. And underneath, in elegant Hangul and English, Lee Jang-woo, private consultation. The hospital administrator appeared at her elbow, red-faced and furious. What the hell did you just do? You're fired. Don't bother coming back tomorrow. But Chloe barely heard him. She was already walking toward the service exit, her mind spinning with impossible possibilities. She'd started this night invisible, drowning in debt. Desperate to survive until her next paycheck. She was ending it employed by the Shadow King of Seoul. Her life would never be the same. Chloe arrived at the Hanam-dong address at exactly 11:47 a.m., 13 minutes early, because being late to meet a man who could buy companies on a whim seemed like a spectacularly bad idea. The building was one of those ultra-modern architectural marvels that cost more per square foot than most Koreans made in a year. All clean lines, floor-to-ceiling windows, and the kind of studied minimalism that screamed unlimited budget. The lobby security guard took one look at the business card she presented and immediately picked up a phone. 30 seconds later, Chloe was being escorted into a private elevator that required a key card to operate. The guard swiped his card, pressed the button for the penthouse, and stepped back out before the doors closed. As the elevator climbed, Chloe caught her reflection in the polished steel walls. She'd worn her best professional outfit, A navy blue blouse she'd bought at Myeongdong for job interviews 3 years ago, paired with black slacks and shoes she'd polished until the scuffs were barely visible. Her natural hair was pulled back in a neat, protective style. She looked presentable, if you didn't look too close at the subtle wear on her shoes or the careful mending on her blouse's collar. The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse, and Chloe stepped into another world. The space was massive, at least 400 square meters of open-concept living area with panoramic views of the Seoul skyline. The decor was masculine and expensive. Charcoal leather furniture, abstract art that was probably worth hundreds of millions of won, and a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a Michelin-starred restaurant. But what struck Chloe most were the security features: cameras in every corner, reinforced windows, and the faint outline of what she suspected was bulletproof glass. Park Hyun-soo, the scarred security guard from the gala, appeared from a side hallway. "Miss Clark, Chairman Lee is in his office. This way." She followed him through the penthouse, past a dining room with a table that could seat 12, past what looked like a home gym visible through an open door, until they reached a set of double doors in heavy dark wood. Hyun-soo knocked twice, then opened the door without waiting for a response. Lee Jung-woo sat behind a massive desk, his attention fixed on 3 computer monitors displaying what looked like financial data and security camera feeds. He wore a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, no tie, and reading glasses that made him look more like a ruthless CEO than a crime lord. Though Chloe was learning those might be the same thing. He glanced up as she entered, then removed the glasses and stood. "Miss Clark, you're early. I appreciate punctuality." "I appreciate opportunities that could change my life," Chloe replied, then immediately worried that sounded too casual. "Sir." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Sit. We have details to discuss." He gestured to one of the leather chairs facing his desk. Chloe sat, acutely aware of Hyun-soo standing by the door like a statue with a gun. Jung-woo rounded his desk and leaned against the front edge, studying her with that same assessing gaze from the gala. It wasn't predatory. It was calculating, like he was trying to read her the way he'd read financial reports. "Before we discuss terms," he said, "I need to make something clear. Working for me means entering my world completely. That world is not the one you've known. It's not safe. It's not simple. And once you're in, there are things you'll see and know that make leaving complicated." "Complicated how?" Chloe asked, though part of her already knew the answer. "Complicated as in, I have enemies, Miss Clark. Very serious people who would love nothing more than to identify my vulnerabilities and exploit them. My mother is my greatest vulnerability. Anyone close to her becomes, by extension, a potential target." He paused, letting that sink in. "I can protect you and your sister. I have the resources and the manpower, but I need your absolute trust. No questions asked when I tell you something is for your safety. No unauthorized communications, no social media posts, no sharing of location data, no careless conversations with old friends about your new life." Chloe's mouth went dry. "You're saying I'd basically be a prisoner?" "I'm saying you'd be protected." His tone was firm, but not unkind. "There's a difference. You'd have freedom within parameters. A beautiful home, the best medical resources, education opportunities. But yes, your life would change fundamentally. You need to understand that before you agree to anything." Chloe thought of Sandra, of the ticking clock on her tuition payment, of the way their landlord had looked at them with barely concealed impatience last month when they'd asked for an extension on rent. She thought of her exhausting shifts at the hospital, her tiny apartment with the broken heating, her student loans accumulating interest like malignant tumors. "What exactly would my job entail?" she asked. "Day to day?" "My mother needs constant supervision, not just medical supervision, I have specialists for that, but companionship. Someone to talk to remind her where she is when she gets confused, to engage her memories while they're still accessible." Jangwoo's voice softened slightly. She likes music, old Korean trot songs from the 60s. She likes cooking traditional dishes from Busan, even if she can't remember the full recipes anymore. She likes stories about when I was young. She needs someone patient, kind, and genuinely invested in her well-being. And my sister? Chloe asked. You said you'd cover her tuition, but your sister would live here, Jangwoo interrupted. Both of you would? I have 6 bedrooms in this penthouse, most of them unused. She'd have her own space, her own bathroom, access to everything she needs. My personal physician would oversee any medical needs, and I'll hire a tutor if her Korean needs improvement for her studies. Chloe's heart was hammering. That's incredibly generous. It's strategic, he corrected. If you're worried about your sister's well-being, you won't be focused on my mother. If she's here and protected, you'll have peace of mind. Everyone benefits. He crossed his arms. As for salary, I'm offering you 120 million won a year, plus full medical coverage for both of you, plus a dedicated education fund for your nurse practitioner certification that will cover tuition, materials, and associated expenses. Chloe actually gasped. She couldn't help it. 120 million won was nearly 3 times what she made now, working herself to exhaustion across double shifts. She couldn't find words. Why so much? Because my mother's happiness is worth more to me than money, Jangwoo said simply. And because I don't pay for loyalty, I pay enough that betraying me would be the stupidest decision of someone's life. The threat was subtle, but unmistakable. Chloe took a deep breath. If I agreed to this, I want one more thing. His eyebrow raised slightly. Go on. My sister finishes her nursing degree. Normal university life, you with friends and study groups and clinical rotations. Not isolated in a fortress, not cut off from the world. She's 19. She deserves a normal life, even if mine has to change. Jangwoo considered this for a long moment. I can arrange secure transportation to and from her university. Discreet security. She won't know she's being watched unless there's a threat. But she attends classes alone. No guards hovering. Those are my compromised terms. It was more than Chloe had hoped for. Deal. Then we're agreed. Jangwoo extended his hand again and Chloe shook it, feeling the weight of this impossible bargain settle onto her shoulders like a crown made of iron. When do we start? She asked. Today. Go home, pack what you and your sister need for a few weeks. Hyun-soo will drive you and help with logistics. By tonight, you'll be moved in. He glanced at his watch. My mother is in the solarium right now with Nurse Kim. I'll introduce you properly after you're settled. Chloe stood, her legs surprisingly steady considering her entire life had just been rewritten in the span of 20 minutes. Chairman Lee? Jangwoo, he corrected. If you're going to live here, formality becomes tedious. Jangwoo, she amended. Thank you. For the opportunity. I won't let you down. He studied her with those dark, unreadable eyes. I know you won't, Miss Clark. That's why you're here. If this story is keeping you on the edge of your seat, please smash that subscribe button. Every new subscriber helps bring more stories like this to life. Now let's continue. By 8 p.m. that evening, Chloe and Sandra were standing in the penthouse's guest wing, staring at their new accommodations with identical expressions of disbelief. Their rooms were connected by a shared sitting area, beautifully furnished with plush couches, a flat-screen television, and bookshelves that someone had already stocked with English and Korean titles, including several nursing textbooks Sandra had mentioned needing during the drive over. Sandra's bedroom had a full-size bed with what looked like Egyptian cotton sheets, a desk for studying, and windows overlooking the city that made their old apartment's view of a brick wall seem like a cruel joke. Chloe, Sandra whispered, her dark eyes huge. This is insane. Who is this guy? Is he like a tech billionaire or something? Chloe hadn't told her sister everything, couldn't tell her everything. He's a businessman who needs someone to care for his mother. And he pays very well. That's all you need to know. A businessman doesn't have armed guards, Sandra pointed out, too smart for her own good. And he doesn't have bulletproof windows. I saw the thickness of the glass when we came in. He's a businessman who takes security seriously, Chloe said firmly. And right now, he's the businessman who's going to pay for your last semester and then some. So please, Sandra, just trust me. Can you do that? Sandra looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay. But if this turns into some K-drama kidnapping situation, I'm calling the embassy. It's not, oh my God, Sandra, he's my employer. He's 34, a voice said from the doorway, making both sisters jump. Jiang Wu stood there, still in his dress shirt but now with a whiskey glass in one hand. He looked amused. And I assure you, Miss Clark, my interest in your sister is purely professional. Chloe felt heat flood her face. I'm so sorry. She didn't mean. She's protective of you. I respect that. He nodded to Sandra. Your tuition has already been transferred to your university. You'll find confirmation in your email. Any questions? Sandra for once seemed speechless. She just shook her head. Good. Dinner is at 8:30 if you're hungry. The cook prepared bulgogi and banchan. If you don't like that, tell her. She'll make whatever you want. Jiang Wu's gaze shifted to Chloe. When you're settled, my mother would like to meet you. She's having a good evening. Very lucid. Take advantage of it. He left before Chloe could respond, his footsteps silent on the hardwood floors. Okay, Sandra said slowly. That was intense. Also, he's kind of terrifying. But also, is it weird that I feel safer here than I did in our apartment? Chloe understood exactly what she meant. Despite the guns and the security cameras and the man who casually bought companies to punish his enemies, there was something solid about this place, something protected. Come on, Chloe said. Let's go meet Kyungmi. The solarium was on the opposite end of the penthouse, a glass-enclosed room filled with plants and comfortable seating that caught the last rays of sunset. Kyungmi sat in a high-backed chair near the windows, a photo album open in her lap. She wore a soft lavender cardigan and had her white hair pinned back with jade clips. She looked up as Chloe entered, and her face brightened with recognition. The kind girl. You came back. Chloe's heart squeezed. I did. I'm Chloe. I'm going to be spending time with you, if that's okay. More than okay. Sit. Sit. Kyungmi patted the ottoman beside her chair. Do you want to see pictures? I was just looking at my Jangwoo when he was small. Chloe sat, and Kyungmi turned the album toward her. The photographs were old, some in black and white, showing a much younger Jangwoo, maybe 7 or 8 years old, with a gap-toothed smile and scraped knees, holding what looked like a soccer ball. He was such a sweet boy, Kyungmi said wistfully, always trying to protect me. Even then. Her voice caught. When his father died, Anton was killed when Yangwoo was 12. After that, my sweet boy had to become hard, had to become strong, to protect us both. Chloe looked at the photos, trying to reconcile the dangerous man she'd met with this smiling child. What happened to his father? Business rivals. Kyungmi's eyes grew distant. They wanted what our family had built. They wanted to take everything. But Jiang Wu, my smart, brave boy, he learned from his father's mistakes. He made sure no one could ever hurt us that way again. She touched the photo gently. But I worry I lost my son when I lost my husband. The boy in these pictures. He knew how to laugh. He knew how to love. Now he only knows how to survive. Chloe didn't know what to say to that. Before she could formulate a response, Kyungmi grasped her hand with surprising strength. You're kind, the elderly woman said, her cloudy eyes suddenly sharp with lucidity. I see it. That's rare in his world. Everyone wants something from him. Power, money, protection. But you just wanted to help an old woman. She leaned closer. Promise me something. What? Chloe asked softly. Save my son from himself. Remind him he's still human, still capable of goodness. Kyungmi's grip tightened. He's drowning in the darkness he built to keep us safe. Don't let him drown completely. Before Chloe could respond, the moment passed. Kyungmi's expression went vague again, her attention drifting back to the photo album as if their intense conversation had never happened. But Chloe sat there, her hand still held in Kyungmi's, and felt the weight of that promise settle into her bones. The weeks that followed took on a strange rhythm. Chloe's days revolved around Kyungmi, helping her with morning routines, engaging her with music and old recipes, walking with her through the penthouse's internal gardens when she grew restless. The elderly woman's condition fluctuated. Some days she was sharp, remembering Chloe's name and asking about Sandra's studies. Other days, she thought Chloe was someone from her childhood in Busan, speaking only in Korean and growing agitated when Chloe couldn't understand everything. But Chloe learned. She asked Nurse Kim for common phrases. She discovered that playing old trot songs soothed Kyungmi when she grew confused. She learned that cooking kimchi jjigae together, even if Kyungmi couldn't remember the full recipe, brought her joy. And Jang-woo watched. Chloe would catch him sometimes, standing in doorways or pausing in hallways, observing as she guided his mother through a memory exercise, or sang along to old Korean songs she'd learned phonetically. He never interrupted, never commented, but his presence became a constant silent surveillance that should have felt intrusive, but somehow didn't. Sandra's semester continued smoothly. She attended classes, made friends, aced her clinical rotations. The secure transportation was so discreet she barely noticed it, just a reliable car service that was always exactly on time. The late-night conversation started by accident. Chloe had been in the kitchen making tea, unable to sleep after a particularly difficult day with Kyungmi, when Jang-woo appeared like a shadow materializing from darkness. "Insomnia?" he asked, reaching for the soju bottle on the top shelf. "More like anxiety," Chloe admitted. "Your mother thought I was her sister today. She kept asking me about people I've never heard of, getting frustrated when I didn't know the answers. And I felt useless." Jang-woo poured 2 fingers of soju into a glass. "You're not useless. On her bad days, no one can reach her. But you try. That's more than most people would do." "She's easy to care about," Chloe said simply. "When she's lucid, she tells the best stories. Did you know she once slapped a loan shark who came to threaten your father? Just walked up and slapped him in front of his men. That earned an actual smile, small but genuine. She left that part out when she told me, said she politely asked him to leave. She apparently drew blood, then invited him to stay for dinner because even gangsters have to eat." Chloe grinned. "Your mother was a badass." "Still is," Jang-woo said quietly. He took a long drink. "The disease is taking her memories, but it can't touch who she fundamentally is. She's the strongest person I know." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the city glittering through the windows behind them. "Can I ask you something?" Chloe ventured. "You don't have to answer. Ask. What happened at that gala?" "Oh, Hye-rin trying to hurt your mother. Your security said later it wasn't random. What did they mean?" Jang-woo's expression shuddered slightly, but he didn't deflect. "I have enemies, Chloe. One family in particular. The Kwan Syndicate, who want to dismantle everything I've built. They'd been watching my mother, waiting for an opportunity. Oh, Hye-rin is in debt to them. They arranged for her to be at that gala, positioned near my mother, with instructions to create an incident that would test my vulnerabilities." Chloe's blood went cold. "They wanted to see how you'd react. And more importantly, they wanted to see who was close to her, who I'd trust with her care." His eyes met hers. "You stepped into their crosshairs the moment you defended her." "Then why did you hire me?" Chloe demanded. "Why put me in more danger?" "Because you were already in danger the second you made yourself visible to them," Jang-woo said bluntly. "The Kwans had cameras at that gala. They know your face, your name, probably your address by now. Leaving you out there unprotected would have been signing your death warrant. Here, you're safe. Sandra is safe. I can control the variables. The reality of what he was saying crashed over Chloe like ice water. She'd thought she was just helping an old woman. She'd had no idea she was stepping into a war zone. Hey, Jiang Wu's voice gentled. He stepped closer, and Chloe realized her hands were shaking. I will not let anything happen to you or your sister. That's a promise. But I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Chloe looked up at him. This dangerous, complicated man who'd bought her loyalty with kindness wrapped in threats, and found herself nodding. Yes, she whispered. I trust you. Something shifted in his expression, a crack in the armor. Thank you, he said, and for the first time he sounded genuinely vulnerable. For trusting me, for caring about my mother, for... He paused. For staying. In that moment, standing in his kitchen at 2 a.m. with soju and tea, and the weight of dangerous secrets between them, Chloe realized something terrifying. She was starting to care about Li Jiangwu as more than just her employer. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. Kyungmi's 73rd birthday fell on a crisp March evening, exactly 4 months after Chloe had stepped into Jiangwu's world. The penthouse had been transformed, not into anything ostentatious because Kyungmi hated fuss, but into something warm and intimate. String lights were draped across the solarium ceiling like captured stars. A small ensemble played traditional Korean music in the corner. The guest list was carefully curated. A few trusted associates, Nurse Kim, Hyun-soo and his security team, and Sandra, who'd become Kyungmi's honorary granddaughter over the past months. Chloe had spent the day helping Kyungmi get ready, styling her white hair and helping her into a beautiful sapphire blue hanbok that matched her eyes. The elderly woman had been lucid all day, a gift in itself, excitedly telling Chloe stories about her childhood birthdays in Busan, where when her mother would make songpyeon and her father would play the geogyeom. This is perfect, Kyungmi had said, squeezing Chloe's hand as they looked out at the decorated solarium. My Jong-woo, he tries so hard to make me happy, but it's you, Chloe, who makes me feel alive. Now, as the party reached its peak around 8 p.m., Chloe stood near the windows, watching Sandra teach Kyungmi a simple dance step while the ensemble played. Jang-woo appeared beside her, 2 champagne flutes in hand. She's happy, he said quietly, offering Chloe a glass. I haven't seen her this present in months. You did that. We did that, Chloe corrected, accepting the champagne. Over the past 4 months, something had shifted between them. The late-night kitchen conversations had become routine, and the accidental touches, his hand on her back as he passed, her fingers brushing his when she handed him coffee, had become less accidental. They hadn't crossed any lines, hadn't acknowledged the tension building like a storm front, but it was there, constant, undeniable. Jang-woo's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, then typed something quickly before pocketing it again. Kang Dong-hyun is running late. Traffic on the bridge. Dong-hyun was Jang-woo's head of security, a former Special Forces operative who'd been with him for 8 years. Chloe had interacted with him dozens of times. He was professional, efficient, and had a dry sense of humor that occasionally surfaced during long security briefings. That's not like him, Chloe commented. Dong-hyun was punctual to the point of obsession. No, Jang-woo agreed. And something flickered across his face. Suspicion, maybe. Or concern. It's not. Before Chloe could respond, Hyun-soo approached quickly, his expression grim. He leaned close to Jang-woo and whispered something that made Jang-woo's entire body go rigid. When? 30 seconds ago. Perimeter cameras caught movement in the parking garage. 4 vehicles, heavily armed. Hyun-soo's hand moved to the gun holstered beneath his jacket. We're implementing Protocol 7. Protocol 7. Chloe had been briefed on the security protocols when she moved in. Protocol 7 meant imminent threat. It meant lockdown. It meant they were under attack. Get my mother and Sandra to the panic room, Jiang Wu ordered, his eyes already scanning the solarium, calculating exits and vulnerabilities. Chloe goes with them, full security detail. Move. Chloe's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor. The ensemble faltered. Guests turned toward the sound of breaking glass just as the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in immediately, bathing everything in eerie red. And then came the sound that would haunt Chloe's nightmares for months, the distant rumble of an explosion from somewhere below, followed by the staccato crack of automatic gunfire. The solarium erupted into chaos. Guests screamed. Hyun-soo was already moving, barking orders into his radio as his team surrounded Kyungmi and Sandra. Chloe ran toward them, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Chloe!" Sandra's voice was pure terror. She reached for her sister just as Hyun-soo scooped her up like she weighed nothing, already moving toward the panic room. "I've got you," Chloe promised, grabbing Kyungmi's arm. The elderly woman looked confused but not panicked. She'd lived through worse in the chaos of post-war Korea. "We're going somewhere safe, okay? Just stay with me." More gunfire, closer now. The penthouse's reinforced door, designed to withstand almost anything, shuddered under some kind of impact. Wood splintered. Metal groaned. "Go!" Jiang Wu roared. Chloe saw him pull a gun from beneath his jacket, saw 3 more security guards materialize around him, saw the cold fury transform him into something elemental and terrifying. Hyun-soo hauled them through a hidden door in the library that Chloe had never known existed, down a concrete stairwell lit by emergency strips, into a reinforced room that looked like something from a military bunker. Steel walls, surveillance monitors. Enough supplies to survive a siege. "Stay here," Hyun-soo commanded, already turning back toward the door. "Do not open this door for anyone except Chairman Lee or me. The lock is biometric. Only responds to your palm print now, Miss Clark. Understand?" Chloe nodded mutely, pulling Sandra and Kyungmi close as Hyun-soo sealed them inside. The door closed with a hydraulic hiss, and then there was silence. Terrible, suffocating silence, broken only by their breathing and Sandra's quiet crying. "What's happening?" Kyungmi asked, her voice small. "Where's my Jiang Wu?" "He's keeping us safe," Chloe said, trying to keep her voice steady even though her hands were shaking violently. She guided them to the bench along the far wall, keeping herself between them and the door. He'll come get us when it's over." The surveillance monitors showed multiple camera feeds from throughout the penthouse. Chloe watched in horror as armed men in tactical gear poured through the shattered entrance. She counted 8, 10, 12 of them. They moved with military precision, clearing rooms systematically. And then she saw Jiang Wu. He was in the main corridor with 4 of his guards, engaged in a firefight that looked like something from an action movie. Bodies dropped. Blood spattered across walls. Jiang Wu moved like violence given human form, precise, efficient, unstoppable. But he was outnumbered. "They're going to kill him," Chloe whispered, pressing her hand against the monitor as if she could somehow reach through and help. "No," Kyungmi said firmly, surprising Chloe with her clarity. "My son is a survivor. He always has been." But even as she spoke, one of the monitors showed something that made Chloe's blood turn to ice, a man she recognized. Kang Dong-hyun, Jiang Wu's head of security, was leading 3 armed men directly toward the library, toward the hidden stairwell, toward the panic room. "No," Chloe breathed. No, no, no. Dong-hyun knew about the panic room. He'd been there when the security systems were explained to Chloe. He knew exactly where they were. On the monitor, she watched him place a device against the wall near the hidden door. Some kind of explosive charge. He said something to his companions, laughing, his face twisted into an expression Chloe had never seen before. Greed, cruel satisfaction. "He's the traitor," Chloe said aloud, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. "Dong-hyun sold us out." The explosion came 30 seconds later. The panic room shuddered. Dust rained from the ceiling. The monitors flickered and died. And then came the grinding sound of the door's emergency release being triggered from the outside, a failsafe that could only be activated with specialized equipment. Equipment the Quan Syndicate had obviously provided their inside man. "Get behind me," Chloe ordered, positioning herself in front of Kyungmi and Sandra. As the door began to open, she grabbed the only weapon she could find, a fire extinguisher mounted on the wall, knowing it was pathetically inadequate but unable to do nothing. The door swung wide. Dong-hyun entered first, his gun trained on them, his smile vicious. Behind him came two more men, Quan enforcers by their tattoos and their cold, predatory eyes. "Well, well," Dong-hyun drawled in Korean. "The Shadow King's precious treasures, all wrapped up in one convenient package. This almost makes up for 8 years of following that arrogant bastard's orders." "How much did they pay you?" Chloe asked, buying time, her mind racing. "How much to betray someone who trusted you?" 5 billion won, plus a position in the Quan organization. Dong-hyun shrugged. "Chairman Lee pays well, but he's a dead man walking. The Kwans are the future. I'm just smart enough to see it." One of the enforcers grabbed Sandra, yanking her away from Kyungmi despite the teenager's scream. The other seized Kyungmi, who tried to fight with surprising strength until he pressed a knife to her throat. "Don't hurt them." Chloe stepped forward, the fire extinguisher raised uselessly. "Please. They're not part of this." "But you are." Dong-hyun's smile widened. "You're the weakness we've been waiting for. The kind nurse who made the monster feel human again." He grabbed Chloe's arm, his gun pressing against her temple. "Lee Jang-woo might survive losing his mother. She's old, sick, expected. But you?" He laughed coldly. "He'll trade everything. His empire, his life, his surrender. All for the girl who taught him to care again." In that moment, Chloe understood with absolute clarity what she had to do. "Take me," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "Let them go. I'm what you want. I'm his weakness. They're just leverage. Take me to him and let them stay here safe." "Chloe, no!" Sandra sobbed, struggling against her captor. "Shh, baby, it's okay," Chloe said. I'm meeting her sister's eyes and trying to communicate everything she couldn't say aloud. "I love you. Be strong. Survive. It's going to be okay." "How touching," Dong-hyun sneered, but he was already calculating. Chloe could see it. "Fine. Bring the old woman too. Double the leverage. Leave the kid. She's not worth the trouble of controlling." They dragged Chloe and Kyungmi out of the panic room, through the devastated library, into the main corridor where bodies lay crumpled and blood painted abstract patterns across expensive hardwood. Chloe tried not to look at the faces, tried not to think about whether Jang-woo was among the dead. They emerged into the great room to find a standoff. Jang-woo stood near the shattered windows, Hyun-soo bleeding but standing beside him. 3 more guards formed a protective semicircle. Facing them were at least 8 Quan enforcers, their weapons trained on Jang-woo's team. And in the center of the room stood a man Chloe had never seen before. Tall, silver-haired, wearing a 3-piece suit despite the carnage. His smile was cold as a Korean winter. Kwon Sang-chul, she realized, the head of the Kwon Syndicate. The architect of this nightmare. "Ah, Lee Jang-woo," Sang-chul said pleasantly, as if they were at a business meeting and not standing in a war zone. "I believe we now have your full attention." Jang-woo's eyes found Chloe, and the expression that crossed his face was pure anguish. "Let them go, Sang-chul. This is between us." "No, my friend. This is about demonstrating that even the Shadow King bleeds." Sang-chul nodded, and Dong-hyun shoved Chloe forward, gun still pressed to her head. And the enforcer holding Kyungmi did the same, his knife drawing a thin line of blood across her throat. "Iyama." Jang-woo's carefully controlled facade cracked. "Don't hurt her, please." "Then surrender," Sang-chul said simply. "Your empire, your assets, your life. Sign everything over to me and I'll let them walk away. Refuse, and I'll make you watch them die before I kill you slowly." Chloe saw Jang-woo's hand tighten on his gun, saw Hyun-soo shake his head slightly. There were too many guns, too many angles. They couldn't take the shot without risking civilian casualties. This was checkmate. Unless... Kyungmi's eyes suddenly sharpened with a clarity Chloe had rarely seen. The elderly woman looked at her son, at Chloe, and then at the champagne bottle sitting on the nearby bar cart, left over from the interrupted birthday party. Chloe saw the calculation happen in real time, saw Kyungmi make the same decision Chloe had made in the panic room. Sometimes love meant becoming dangerous. "For my husband," Kyungmi whispered in Korean. Then she threw her entire body weight backward, slamming into her captor and throwing him off balance. Her hand shot out, grabbed the champagne bottle and swung it with all her strength into the man's temple. The bottle shattered. The man dropped. And everything exploded into chaos. Jang-woo and Hyun-soo moved as one, their shots perfectly coordinated. 3 enforcers dropped before Chloe could process what was happening. Dong-hyun spun toward the threat, his gun leaving Chloe's head for just a second. Chloe drove her elbow into his throat with every ounce of strength she possessed. He staggered. She grabbed his gun arm, twisting it with a move she'd learned in a self-defense class years ago. He screamed and dropped the weapon. Then she was diving toward Kyungmi, covering the elderly woman's body with her own as gunfire erupted all around them. The battle lasted maybe 90 seconds but felt like hours. Jang-woo moved through the chaos like an avenging angel, his face a mask of cold fury as he systematically eliminated threats. Hyun-soo took 2 bullets to his vest but kept fighting. Reinforcements, Jang-woo's real people, poured through the service entrance. When the smoke cleared, every Kwon enforcer was dead or dying. Dong-hyun lay in a spreading pool of his own blood, his eyes already glazing, and Kwon Sang-chul knelt in the center of the room, Jang-woo's gun pressed against his forehead. "Please," Sang-chul gasped. All his earlier confidence evaporated. "We can negotiate." "You threatened my mother," Jang-woo said softly. "You put your hands on someone I love. There's no negotiation for that." The gunshot was thunderous in the sudden silence. Sang-chul collapsed, and Jang-woo lowered his weapon, his hands shaking. The first time Chloe had ever seen him show physical signs of shock. Then he was running toward them, dropping to his knees beside Chloe and Kyungmi. "Are you hurt? Tell me you're not hurt." "We're okay," Chloe managed, though her ears were ringing and her hands were covered in blood. Whose? She wasn't sure. "Sandra's in the panic room. She's safe." "I know." Hyun-soo's team already secured her. Jang-woo's hands were on Chloe's face, tilting it toward the emergency lighting, checking for injuries with desperate thoroughness. "You could have been killed? You should have stayed in the panic room." "They breached it." Dong-hyun. "I know. I'm sorry. I trusted him and he..." Jang-woo's voice broke. "This is my fault. All of it." "No," Kyungmi said firmly, sitting up with Chloe's help. Her handbook was torn and bloody, but her eyes were sharp and present. "This is the price of the life we live, Jang-woo-ya. But look, we survived, we fought, and this brave, foolish girl..." She touched Chloe's cheek gently. "She chose to save us when she could have saved herself." Jang-woo looked at Chloe, and something in his expression cracked open. All the walls he'd built, all the armor he wore, it crumbled. "Chloe," he whispered, "I can't lose you. Do you understand?" "I can't." "You won't," Chloe said, taking his blood-stained hand in hers. "I'm not going anywhere." He kissed her then, fierce and desperate, and full of everything they'd been too afraid to say. When they finally broke apart, Kyungmi was smiling through her tears. "About time," the elderly woman said. "I was beginning to think I'd have to lock you both in a closet. We're almost at the end, but before we go, if you're still here, you're one of us now. Subscribe, share, and let's keep these stories alive." Now, the final chapter. The cleanup took hours. The explanations to police, carefully managed through officials on Jang-woo's payroll, took longer. By dawn, the penthouse looked like a crime scene because it was won, But the worst of it had been contained, documented, and would eventually disappear into the machinery of power that ran beneath Seoul's surface. 3 days later, after the contractors had repaired the damage and Sandra had stopped having nightmares every night, Jang-woo found Chloe in the solarium, watching the sunrise. He carried a piece of paper, her contract, she realized, and a silver lighter. "What are you doing?" Chloe asked as he held the flame to the corner of the document. "Ending an arrangement that was never what I actually wanted," Jang-woo said, watching the paper burn in the decorative fireplace. "I hired you to care for my mother, to be an employee. But somewhere along the way, you became essential to me in ways I can't define with salary and job descriptions." The contract turned to ash. "I don't want an employee, Chloe. I want a partner, an equal. Someone who will call me on my bullshit and save my mother's life, and kiss me like you did 3 nights ago." He turned to face her fully. "I want you to stay because you want to, not because I'm paying you. I want to build something real with you." Chloe's heart felt too big for her chest. "I have student loans, zero savings, a sister to support. I'm not exactly prime partnership material for the Shadow King of Seoul." "You're everything," Jang-woo said simply. "Everything I didn't know I needed until you caught my mother and told off Oh Hee-rin and changed my entire world." He reached for her hand. "So what do you say, Chloe Clark? Will you stay?" She answered by kissing him, soft and sweet and full of promises. "Yes," she whispered against his lips. "I'll stay." 6 months later, Chloe walked into the Shilla Seoul's winter gala wearing a midnight blue gown that cost more than her old annual salary. Sapphires at her throat that Jang-woo had insisted came with no strings attached, and confidence that had been earned through fire and blood and survival. Sandra walked beside her, healthy and radiant, her nursing degree nearly complete. Kyungmi held Chloe's arm, having a remarkably good evening, her eyes bright as she took in the familiar ballroom. And Jang-woo followed behind them, his hand resting possessively on Chloe's lower back, his presence parting the crowd just as effectively as it had a year ago. They'd been invited as honored guests, Jang-woo's official rehabilitation into high society after the tragic security incident that had eliminated the Kwan threat. Everyone knew the real story, of course. But no one dared speak it aloud. Halfway through the evening, Oh Hye-rin approached, her face carefully neutral. "Miss Clark," she said quietly. "Or should I say, Mrs. Lee?" "We're not married," Chloe corrected, though Jang-woo's ring sat on her finger, a promise for the future. "But you can call me Chloe." "I wanted to apologize," Hye-rin said, the words clearly costing her, "for what I did to Kyungmi Nim. And to you. I was cruel and petty and you were bought by the Kwans," Chloe said bluntly. "Used as a pawn in someone else's game. I know. Jang-woo told me everything." Hee-rin's carefully maintained composure cracked. "I'm so sorry. I've lost everything because of that night. My marriage, my reputation, Your empathy," Chloe suggested. "That's what was really missing. And the rest you can rebuild." She reached into her evening bag and pulled out a business card. "I'm creating a foundation in Kyungmi's name, providing healthcare, education, and job placement services for caregivers and nurses. People who are invisible to those who have everything. People like I used to be." Hye-rin took the card with shaking hands. "Your first donation will be generous," Chloe continued, channeling the power she'd learned from watching Jang-woo. "And you'll volunteer at our training center 1 day a month. Consider it penance with a purpose." Hee-rin nodded quickly. "Yes, of course. Thank you. I don't deserve your mercy." "Maybe not," Chloe agreed. "But I'm giving it anyway, because someone showed me mercy once, when I had nothing to offer in return." As Hee-rin retreated, Chloe felt Jang-woo's arms wrap around her waist from behind. "You're terrifying," he murmured into her ear. "I'm so proud of you." "Learned from the best," Chloe replied, leaning back against his chest. Across the ballroom, she spotted a young woman in a catering uniform who looked exhausted, overwhelmed, and desperately out of place. A foreigner, by the look of her. Probably working multiple jobs to survive. Chloe caught her eye and smiled, then discreetly crossed the room. "Tough night?" she asked gently. The woman startled. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Did you need something?" "No, but you look like you might." Chloe slipped a card into the woman's hand. "If you ever need help, a better job, healthcare, education, call this number. Tell them Chloe sent you." The woman stared at the card, tears welling in her eyes. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." "Someone helped me once," Chloe said softly, "when I was where you are now. Pay it forward, okay?" She returned to Jiang Wu, who was watching her with an expression of pure love. Kyung-mi had been seated with Sandra, both of them laughing at something on Sandra's phone. "Dance with me," Jiang Wu said, offering his hand. Chloe took it, and he led her onto the floor as the orchestra began a waltz. She fit perfectly against him, their movements synchronized after months of late-night dancing in his penthouse when Kyung-mi wanted to hear music. "You know what today is?" Jiang Wu asked as they swayed together. "1 year since I caught your mother and ruined my life," Chloe teased. "1 year since you saved my soul," he corrected. "Everything I am now. Everything good. I'd at least started the night you stepped between a monster and my mother and showed me what real courage looks like." Chloe looked up at him, this dangerous, powerful, complicated man who'd become her partner in every sense of the word. "I love you," she said. Simple. True. "I love you too," he replied, and kissed her in the middle of the Shilla Soul Ballroom, in front of everyone who mattered and many who didn't, claiming her publicly and proudly. From their table, Kyung-mi watched her son dancing with his beloved and smiled. "You did good, my dear girl," she whispered to no one in particular, her mind clear and her heart full. "You saved us all." Later that night, after the gala had ended and Kyung-mi had been settled into bed with her favorite music playing softly, Jiang Wu found Chloe on the penthouse balcony, she looking out at the Seoul skyline. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "How different my life is now. A year ago, I was invisible, drowning, barely surviving." She leaned back into his warmth. "Now I have a family, a purpose. You. And I have you." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "I never thought I'd find someone who could see past the monster to the man underneath." "The monster protects the people he loves," Chloe said softly. "I can live with that." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights glitter below. "There's something I need to tell you," Jiang Wu said eventually, his voice more serious now. "The Quan Syndicate is finished. Sang Chul's death saw to that. But they had allies, people who haven't forgotten what happened. And people who might still come for us." Chloe turned in his arms, facing him. "Is that a warning?" "It's a promise." His dark eyes were intense. "That no matter what comes, I'll protect you. Protect our family. Whatever it takes." "I know." She reached up to touch his face. "And I'll be right beside you. Fighting. Just like I did in the panic room. That's what terrifies me. That's what you love about me." A smile tugged at his lips. "Among many other things." He kissed her again, softer this time, slower, and Chloe let herself sink into the moment, into the man, into the life she'd never imagined having. The kind nurse had become a queen. The Shadow King had finally learned to live in the light. And somewhere out there, in the shadows of Seoul's underworld, their enemies were watching, waiting, planning. But that was a story for another day. Thank you for staying with Chloe's journey. From a borrowed uniform to diamonds and power, this story proves that sometimes the worst moments lead to the best beginnings. If this touched you, please subscribe and share it. These voices matter. These stories deserve to be heard. And don't forget, Chloe's story is far from over. The shadows are watching. Until next time, keep breathing life into the narratives that refuse to stay silent.